Alright, welcome everyone to part 2 of the Lackey Redemption plugin tutorial. Now that we hopefully have Lackey installed and the Redemption plugin installed, then we're gonna go ahead and give you guys a quick tour of each of the tabs in Lackey and how to use it and play games. So if you don't have Lackey installed or you don't have the Redemption plugin yet, you can go ahead and look in the description for part 1 of this tutorial. But if you are at this point that I am right here, where you've got the Redemption card back here and you've got things set up a little bit, then we're all set to go. You're in the right place. So let's go ahead and start by looking at the game tab, which right now it says we're offline, we're not connected to the server or in an actual game, but there is this test dummy here that you can play against. I often use this if I'm not playing anyone. I still use this for visualizing decks, and you can see sometimes when people post decks on Discord, they have it all laid out and have the actual card images there instead of just putting a list in there. Makes it a little bit more compact and a little bit easier to see, as long as you know what the cards do and can read what they, or at least what the names are, so you can look them up. But yeah, this is useful for more than just playing, but also for visualizing if you don't want to get all your cards out and make the deck physically. I kind of go back and forth on both, because this is a little more convenient sometimes, but actually using the cards and makes it a little bit easier. So oftentimes I'll just kind of like theorize a deck on here and then build it with cards after that, depending on what it's going to be used for. But since I build decks pretty much weekly for the channel, I definitely don't always put them all together in cards, so definitely up to you. But anyways, here is the gameplay space. This is where this is the table that you'll be playing on. And then here you will have in the middle here each of your zones. So you've got your hand, your deck, discard, land of redemption, reserve, banish pile, tokens, and then right at the bottom you have the log, which if you are not on voice chat or video chat or whatever with the person that you're playing with, you can just use this as like a text thing.
Hello.
So if you put in hello, Lackey is going to say hello. We'll figure out how to turn that off once we get to the preferences tab. But you can also say things like my turn or whatever as you're talking to your opponent, and then also as you do game actions, they will be saved in this log. One thing that you can also use to make this whole process easier, I guess, is you can use these buttons that show up on just above the log, and they have like canned messages that you can customize. And so if you're in mutual destruction and you want to pass, you can just click on pass, and Lackey will say pass. Certain things that you say will automatically have a sound in it. I never play with sound, so I'll definitely show you guys how to turn that off, because that's what I normally do, but it's definitely up to you. It can be useful, because like when you reveal your deck, it makes a sound, and so it also makes it sound for your opponent, so that if they're not necessarily paying attention to the log, they'll know that something is happening. They should pay attention. You're looking through your deck, and hopefully you have a card that's actually letting you do that instead of just trying to cheat or something. Anyways, so the log and the buttons here can also be used to do kind of game actions, I guess. Like you can roll. If you use /roll, there's a button there for it, or if you just type it in and it rolls a 6-sided die by default. You can also draw from here. So if I do /draw1, I would draw a card, but I don't have a deck, so I guess we'll have to wait on that part until we actually get a deck loaded in here. So let's go ahead and transition into that. I guess the last thing on this page is just on the left side you can, okay, maybe not the last thing. There's a couple more things I just thought of that I should show you. We'll get a deck loaded first. So yeah, here's kind of your quick glance, who you are and what your zones have, and then your test dummy, who they are and what their zones have. So let's go over into the deck editor here. As you can see, this is empty. There's no deck loaded at the moment, but we do have all of the cards available here. Looks like some of the images haven't quite finished loading in yet, and only a certain number of them load in at a time, so you might have to hover over a card for a little bit in order to get the image to pop up. So let's go and look at the deck tab. Normally you would have a list of recent decks in here that you could do a little drop down from. You can do open recent, but I don't have any recent decks. You can go to browse, which is where we're going to go now, and let's just grab the J starter deck, and we can choose that, and now we'll have the J deck loaded in here. The starter decks are set up by default in the redemption plugin for Lackey. So here we have that, but let's say I want to modify it. I can add cards to it. Let's add the new IJ plus New Jerusalem. So we're going to double click on that. That's one way to add it. You can also click and drag it in there. You can also click on it and highlight it, and you can use your arrow keys. Right will add it, and left will take it out. So right now I've got 9 copies of New Jerusalem in my deck. Probably shouldn't do that. So I'm going to just go ahead and left click and left arrow and take them out one at a time here until I just have 1. You can see my deck is now at 51. And then once you make that change, let's say I want to make it different from the normal J starter deck. I want to name it something different, so you can say with NJ. So now I'm going to, with this deck name, I'm going to go down and save the deck. So you get that shuffling sound. I guess that is kind of a nice feedback thing, because the button doesn't really change when you save it. There's no kind of visual feedback, but the sound is kind of nice because you know that the deck did for sure save. It normally does. I mean, I haven't had any problems with actually clicking it and then the deck not saving, but that's just a good confirmation, I guess. You can also export the deck as TXT, so if you click on that, you get that feedback shuffling. And that means that you now made a text file with the list of cards in the deck. Normally it is a .dec file, DEK, and but now if we go to browse, we can see that there is this starter J with NJ deck, or .dec, and then the starter J with NJ.txt. If you want to find where those are in your file explorer, you can go over to the right and hit open directory. So this will bring you to your Lackey installation. So it's on this USB, portable programs, Lackey, LackeyCCG, and then it'll go to plugins, redemption, and decks. So these are all the decks that I have in my redemption plugin. And if I want to, I can view this starter J with nj.txt file. You can see we just added New Jerusalem in here. The order of this file really doesn't matter at all. Once you add a reserve, then that will change things a little bit, or like the reserve has to be in its own section. But the order that it shows up in the text file is going to be the order that you added the cards to the deck. So because we just added New Jerusalem, it's going to be last in here. If we took out Possessing Demon and then re-added it, then between saves and then exported it to a text file again, then it would be at the bottom here. So it is a little bit annoying in that way that you can't export it after like sorting it in Lackey, because if we go back to here, you can sort your deck by type, and now you have all of your good enhancements together, all of your heroes together, and all the lost souls together. But when you do export as TXT, it's not going to change the order of the text file here. So that is a little bit annoying, because if you want to share your deck list, it's a lot better if it's sorted. It's easier for people to read and kind of understand what's going on if you want, especially if you want feedback. So I would recommend finding a way to sort that. It's probably going to have to be manually, but you could maybe put it into a spreadsheet and figure out something there. anyways, that is what you can do with decks that you already have made. If you want to copy a deck in, you would go back to this decks folder, and if someone sends you like a .deck or a .txt file, you can copy it into here as long as it's of the Lackey format, and you can load it into Lackey from there. You can also, if we right click and create a new text document, I'm going to call it Josh Grand Prix right now, because I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to go back to our the forums here, and let's go back to Cactus Game Design message boards, or this, use this forum button. You can get back to here and go down to deck building and design, other tournament winners, and we're going to go to find Josh's Lackey Grand Prix, his first place deck that he posted on the boards in Lackey format. So it was a Lackey tournament, so it makes sense that he had this already in Lackey, and as you can see, he's sorted everything here for easy viewing. And if we go ahead and copy that, go back to this text file, paste, and now we'll, I guess we'll take out these spaces here. I don't think they really matter, but we'll go ahead and just make it look a little bit cleaner. And as I was mentioning before, at the bottom you have the reserve, and you can add those in. If you add any tokens to your deck, it would show up like this, if I can spell, tokens, one Majestic Heavens Lost Soul token, or whatever. But we don't have to bother with that right now, so I'll just save that, and then you can go to Lackey and go to Browse, and now I have this Josh Grand Prix.txt, and I can choose that and load it in, and now I have Josh's deck in here so that I can use, try out, and I can edit how I want to. And then if you hit Save Deck, get the shuffling sound. Now if you go to Browse, Open Directory, you'll see that there is Josh Grand Prix.deck in here as well, in addition to the txt file. So yeah, that's how you can, or I guess one way to copy in decks. I can also, if I just go to New Deck, I can start fresh, click that. And then also, since I have the, if I have Josh's deck, the TXT part copied or on my clipboard right now, I can also just click paste, and it will put the deck in. But I think, yeah, it doesn't, when you do paste like that, it doesn't account for the reserve part of it. It doesn't do that intelligently, I guess. So now we've got all the stuff that is supposed to be in the reserve in the deck here as well. So that's not the best way to do it with Redemption, because we have reserves like that. But if you're just copying, I guess you can just go to here, and you can only copy the deck portion of it, and then you can do the reserve manually or something like that. But it's easier just to put it into a TXT file. So once you're making your new deck, you can, there's a number of things you can do in the card pool here. You can have all cards, which is what most people normally use. There's also this card pool tab where I think you can theoretically like put your collection into here. It will save as a .deck file, and you can build your decks from here. I've never actually done that, and I'm not sure that it's really all that useful. I like to just do all cards, and you kind of just know what you have and what you don't. But I guess it does make it a little bit less overwhelming, or instead of 4,268 options, you just have a few hundred or whatever you're working with. You can also use this tab for booster draft, and I did do a booster draft on live stream. The first one I did kind of in early 2021, so if you want to go back and find that, you can. And in that video, I kind of give a little bit of tutorial I mean, I kind of like say what I'm doing as we're doing it, and show you how to set up for doing a booster draft in there. If you guys want a dedicated video on how to do a booster draft in Lackey, I can certainly do that. Just let me know. But for now, we're going to leave that alone and just look at the all cards, card pool here that we can use to search through. So this will kind of, you can change the order of it. Usually I like to sort by type, and you can also sort by brigade here. You can sort by legality. That's kind of an important one if you're only building for rotation. But easier than sorting, you can use these filters over here. So maybe I want to search for cards whose name contains, I guess the most common use of this is like searching for lost souls. Like if I want to search for cards whose name contains humble, then I will get the lost soul, humble seeker, Manasseh, the humbled. And that's going to be better than in the quick search, because quick search has to be specifically the card name. So if I type in lost soul, then I'm going to get every single lost soul, because that's what the name of the card starts with. So that's not going to be super helpful. Usually what I do when I'm doing this is just search by, or sort by set, and that kind of helps to figure out where the lost souls are if I'm adding them all at the same time. But otherwise, the name contains filter is a good way to do that. If you want to, maybe you're building an LOC only deck and you want to do set contains lineage, then you can filter by that, and then you will only have LOC cards here. We'll see if one of the images will load. Come on now. There we go. There's a Judah. And so this is a good way to limit your card pool that way. There's also filters for type and brigade, class, identifier. Maybe that's a good one. Like if you want to build build a Sadducee deck with the new GOC cards, you can have the identifier contains Sadducee and see well the Sadducees are in the game, and then you can sort by type, and then that'll separate these evil enhancements that count the number of Sadducees you have from the evil characters that are actual Sadducees, and then maybe you want to sort by rotation so that you don't get the classic cards in there, only rotation stuff. And there's also a filter for that in here as well, where I can type in rotate, and it will get me only rotation Sadducees. Maybe I can do evil character as well. So yeah, there's definitely lots of options you can use here, and there's additional filters, like it keeps on going down. After legality, it repeats. So maybe I want identifier contains Sadducee there, and then identifier contains Pharisee here, so that I can see which evil characters are both Pharisees and Sadducees. So right now I've just got the Supercilious Scribes and the Brood of Vipers. So then you can also just click this button to turn filters off, and it will reset, or you can just uncheck them and check them as you are going along here. So that's how the filters work. In future versions of Lackey, or maybe in current ones if you're watching this in the future, we hope to have a little drop-down menu right here, right next to the quick search bar, that will allow you to choose what format you're building for. So maybe classic would just give you all of the cards here. Rotation would just only give you rotation cards. LOC, you'd have Lineage of Christ and then the legacy rares from that set, and so on. So it's just pretty much the same thing as the legality column or the set column, kind of combining those to make it a little bit clearer or more user-friendly. So now let's take a look at, I've got Josh's deck in here. How do I use it in a game? So I can go down to the middle part here and hit load entire deck to you, and that will shuffle it up and put it right into my deck here. You can see I've got the 50 cards in my deck, and then 10 in reserve that are automatically visible to me. You can also move, you can adjust the size of these zones. Maybe I want to see my hand a little bit bigger, my reserve a little bit bigger. you can move things around pretty freely, just with these little divider bars. And then I can go to my hand here, which is currently empty, and use some of these draw functions I was showing you before. So if I go into the log here, or kind of the chat part, I can do /draw8 and enter that, and it will let you draw 8 cards. So maybe make that a little bit bigger for you guys. So yeah, the log will say Jaden draws 8 cards, and now I have 8 cards. You'll also notice the reason why I normally have the this part bigger is because the size of the cards in Lackey is a little bit bigger than what the preview allows, I guess, or what kind of the maximum size for the previews is. So I like to have it so that it doesn't look different when I hover over them. It's kind of a preference thing. Maybe there's a way to change that. It might have to do with the actual size of the image files. But anyways, once you have your hand like this, I can click and drag my lost souls onto the table. I can use this draw 1 button to replace the 2 lost souls. I drew another one. There we go. And it's just about clicking and dragging, putting your cards where they belong. And when you put them on the table, now my cards are going to show up, or I usually put my cards down here in the bottom left corner, but for my opponent they're going to show up kind of mirrored. They're going to show up over here, so that they can put their cards in the space on their Lackey, and then it will show up over here from my perspective. There's definitely different ways to do it. Some people, organize their territory like this. I guess, Hopper would be sent over here to their land of bondage, and then, put their heroes here and their evil characters there, and kind of lines so that you're kind of playing left to right instead of front to back. And maybe that's a little bit better because it leaves more space in the middle for battles and stuff, but it's kind of up to your preference and the preference of your opponent. There's also ways that you can adjust how you view the cards. Up in the top left corner here, there's a zoom function, so you can make the board smaller, or you can zoom in all the way to the middle. That one's not as useful. I usually just keep that right at 100%. But you can also go to scale, which will scale up the size of your cards. You can go up to 300%. The cards are really big, and you can't really tell what's going on. But at 100%, the cards seem pretty small, and it's kind of hard to recognize what's going on, because it's hard to see what the cards are. So I usually, I guess to change this, you can just click and drag to scale it up or down. I usually keep it at around 130% for when I'm playing. But that's kind of up to your preference as well. I know some people like to have them bigger. Just makes it a little bit easier. And so that's, you just left click, drag up and down to adjust that, and then you can use this little X to get out of that. And if you want to reset it to 100%, you can do that. You can also pan, which is just moving it around. Also not super helpful, but maybe there's a case in which you would want to do that. And then finally there's tilt, which means you can tilt it so that it's kind of more like you're playing at a table, and you can see your opponent here. We've got the little test dummy. Maybe we could just make it a picture of me, and you guys can pretend to play me. No, just kidding. But you can use that to move the table up and down the perspective. Some people like to play like this. It makes it more realistic, but I generally keep it flat like this because that just makes it easier for viewing, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and bring the scale up a little bit there, and we can see what's going on. So with each card you have multiple options of what you can do and how you can manipulate the card. You can right click and get all of these options here. You can, let's say my Noah gets set aside for a few turns. I can use these set aside counters to indicate that, or I can go plus or minus 1, or I can just set aside X to 6, and now he's got 6 set aside counters on him. And there's also XP, it just shows up different counters, and if I do clear, then that will take everything off of Noah. You can turn over cards, so say like you're putting down a face down artifact, pretend my Assyrian camp is an artifact, I can turn it over before I put it down, and then when I put it onto the playing field it will be turned over so it's not visible to your opponent. But as soon as you clear it, then it will come back face up. There's also a Meekify option, so you can right click and click Meekify, or you can double click on cards and that will Meekify them. Some people find that annoying because they accidentally double click and then suddenly your Assyrian camp is somehow meek, but it can also be nice if, like, say my Assyrian camp is negated by a 3 woes, you can turn it upside down to denote that. You can also use a set aside counter to denote that. There's different things that you'll get used to or kind of start getting into the habit of doing to make things easier for yourself on Lackey, but yeah, those are kind of some of the basic options and basic functionality. I guess maybe if Noah gets bounced or maybe top decked, I can do send to top of deck, and that will put Noah right on top. If I draw one, there he is. He's going to stay in his meek version. We can go ahead and right click and unmeekify, or if he did clear, that would do the same thing. And the other way to do that is you can also just drag Noah straight from the table to the deck, and that will put him on top. What you can't do is you can't drag him and put him on bottom, so you do have to right click, send to bottom of deck in order to do that. And now if I use one of these middle buttons here to reveal the bottom card, you can see there Noah is. Once you have a card selected like this, it's going to be highlighted in yellow like this, and you can use these buttons in the middle to do things with him as well. So I can use this Meekify button right here to do that. I can select him and hit clear to reset him. I can select him, or let's see, maybe I play my Assyrian camp as a fortress, but I want to denote that, so I can select it and either right click and do edit note, or I can just click and select it and hit edit note, and now I can put it in fortress. And so now we'll remember that Assyrian camp is a fortress and I can't try to block with it later. You can select it and erase notes on selected cards, or if you just right click and clear, that would get rid of it as well. And you can just close the edit note thing. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the things that you can do with cards. Certainly, keep playing around with it, and there might be things that you find that you need to do. I guess one of the common ones is like Messenger of Satan or Treacherous Land. They're cards that allow you to draw cards from the bottom of your deck. The easiest way to do that on Lackey, as far as I'm aware, is to right click on your deck, and then you're going to go to move bottom 1 to top of hand. It's a little bit complicated, but as you can see, it just shows up in the log as Jaden draws a card. So if I'm moving cards from my deck to my hand without searching, then I am drawing cards. So I'd draw one from the bottom. And now if I go over to my deck, as you can see, nothing's revealed to me. I can right click, do reveal to all if it's something like you're revealing your deck to all players for some reason. Can't think of a card that does that. But you can reveal to owner all, and it will give you that notification sound thing so that everybody knows that you're searching your deck, which is, I guess, something that's just kind of an honor system thing if you have your sound on. I don't know, not necessarily needed. So let's say I'm attacking with Zerubbabel and I want to play Akeem from my deck. So now I can go ahead and play him out, and then I right click again, and I can do reveal to all, none in shuffle. I can do reveal to owner, none in shuffle, because right now the owner, or me, I'm the only person looking at it. If you do reveal to others, none, it's not going to do anything because others could already not see it. If you want to search I guess let your opponent search your deck, then you, let's see, we'll do all, none, and shuffle. Then you can go and reveal to others all. And so now my opponent would be able to look through my deck Doesn't really matter who does that, because I could also go over to my opponent's zones by using either these arrows here, or I can use this little drop down and it'll give you all the players in the game. And so if I go over to test dummy, I can right click on their deck and reveal to others all, and that will reveal their deck to me. So it doesn't really matter who does that, but I would make a note here. Let's reveal to all none. If you're going to, let's say my opponent draws a lawless Lost Soul, and that lets them reveal the top 6 cards of a deck. If I go to do that, so I go reveal to all top 6, and my opponent goes to do that at the same time, then you might lose some cards, because this reveal window only should, like, there should only be one instance of it at a time. Otherwise, cards might just vanish from the game, and either, hopefully you saved recently and you recognize that they're gone, and you can just kind of revert to that save and do some things over. But if not, then cards will disappear. And there was one time where cards did disappear after a certain amount of time. I shuffled my deck and they reappeared, or I think it was my opponent's deck. It was in a game recently, and I was looking over the video or editing the video. It wasn't, or I guess I wasn't editing it, I was just reviewing it because it was a playtest game and was making notes. Anyways, and I noticed that the size of their deck changed, and I kind of figured out where it happened. I'm not really sure why it happened, but Lackey is a little buggy sometimes and can do that. So it seems like shuffling your deck might kind of bring the cards back, or like them not vanishing. You can see how many cards are in each zone, and they vanished, as in like the number of cards in the zone changed, or I guess didn't change when they were added back to the deck. So there are a few bugs, but just be careful when you're revealing. Like, maybe just have a unspoken rule among players in Lackey that if your card does the revealing, then you should do the revealing. If my opponent draws Lawless and wants to do my deck, then I shouldn't be the one to reveal it, unless you and your opponent are just both aware of what's going on. And in this reveal thing, you have who the cards are visible to. So right now they're only revealed to the test dummy. If I just did reveal to others instead of reveal to all. But now if I just click Jaden, then I'll be able to see all the cards here. And if I do, or at the end here, you've got when done, send to top or bottom of owner's zone. So you can send them to your deck, your hand, discard, and don't shuffle. So with Lawless, I would get to pick an evil card. The Lost Soul would go into play, and let's say I pick 3 woes or something, that goes to my hand, and send the rest to bottom of owner's deck and don't shuffle. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the in-game actions. I guess I kind of said that before, but there were more things that I found. So as you can see, I mentioned a little bit before, kind of the quick reference, I guess, or summary of your cards. On the left here, this is where I am. It has your redeemed souls as kind of the highlighted thing. You can change the stats of this. I can just set it to 5, and automatically I win the game because I have 5 redeemed souls. It's not exactly how it works, but let's say I am in this battle with Zerubbabel and I rescue this lost soul. What my opponent can do is, instead of me like just grabbing the lost soul, I mean what some people do is they just put the lost soul over here, and that's just a sign that I can grab it and drag it into my land of redemption. The other thing you can do when you're surrendering the lost soul is my opponent can just click and drag it over to this land of redemption zone under my name, and that will show up here. The redeemed souls counter here is not related to the land of redemption zone. For whatever reason, might just not have been something you can do, but you just have to kind of keep track of this separately. So we'll go ahead and subtract 5 from my redeemed souls, and so this number isn't necessarily going to update unless you change it, and it doesn't really matter. You can just look at the Land of Redemption here and see how many are in it. And once you get to 5, that means you win, unless you're playing Type 2, which I encourage. And you have to get up to 7. Anyways, so then you also have your opponent zones down here. So let's say they come in and rescue a lost soul, and I would give them the Wanderer, and I can just drag it over to their Land of Redemption. There are also the turn counters here. You can pass the turn if you're not using voice chat, or if you just want to use it to keep track of how many turns you play during a game or something like that. So right now it's turn 4, Jaden's turn. There's also the phase counters right here, so you can use that to go through the phases of your turn if you want to. I never use these, and it's not really necessary, but if you want to indicate, like, okay, I'm going to my from my prep phase, I'm going to the battle phase, I'm about to declare attackers, and maybe your opponent wants to do something about that before you attack. So that's just you can use these if you really want to, but there's not really a huge benefit or technical reason why you should need to. And yeah, that's pretty much everything in here. I'll show you guys how to change these messages, these automatic buttons or responses, or whatever, that you can send in this chat once we get to the preferences. But I think we covered everything in the deck editor, so now let's go to the server. This is where you go if you are actually ready to play a game with someone and you want to kind of connect to them. You connect to the game matching server. So right now it looks like if you go to the left tab, it'll show you all players that are currently on the server, or on the Lackey server, and it'll show you what plugin they're using. And then the one next to it will be the plugin that you're currently on, and it will see who all is on the plugin with the same name. So right now, Demon Hunter 85 and Kevin the Dude, they're both on the Redemption server, and so they are in here and currently not playing a game, it looks like, because now if you go to the game list, you can see all games over here. You've got whatever people are playing, hosting their own games. And then if you go to the right tab, it's the Redemption games, which there are currently none going on. So if I want to start a game, I can click on host a game, and that will bring up this little menu. So I can change the name if I want, but just by default it'll be like Jaden's game, or whatever your name is, and then '*s game. You can set a password for it so that anyone who tries to join has to have the password. So I don't use this very frequently, but if you want to, you can do this. Maybe you're working on a deck that you want to keep secret, or not be bothered, or just don't want people jumping in unless they are supposed to be there. So yeah, that's what the password is for, but it is optional. You do not need it. Then the number of initial seats, you can change this for if you want to play multiplayer, but it's going to default to 2. Looks like you can go up to 10, but in Redemption, of course, we only do 4 at most if we're playing multiplayer. Usually, I guess you can do 5, but 4 people on Lackey already gets pretty crowded. So you can also add seats once you're in the game as well. So don't sweat it if you only select 2 and you start the game. The only other thing you really need to do, or I guess need to pay attention to on here, is whether or not you want to allow spectators. So if I turn this off, then nobody will be able to come and watch the game, which I guess that would be it's similar to the password protection, but you could just turn off allow spectators, and then whoever joins with your number of initial seats, then they will be the only ones who can join and even spectate the game. So we'll go ahead and leave that on, because I usually don't care if people want to come in and watch my games. And then I'll come down here to host a game. So that'll bring me straight back to the game tab, and now instead of being offline, it says game host 1, or however many players are currently in here. And I can now I can move my seat if I want to sit in the second spot, and then you can come up to the menu up here and go to let's see, add seat, and now there's a third seat. Or I can remove seat, and now there's only 2. So then when someone else wants to join your game, they're gonna go to the server, they're gonna click on Jaden's game, or whatever the name of your game is, and then the second button here, which is usually not grayed out if the maximum number of players is not reached, and then they'll just click join selected game. Of course, I can't join a game that I'm already a part of. And so that's, in order to be a player, you can join selected game, and then the next button is spectate game. So if you just want to be a spectator, you can click on this one. And what that allows you to do is you're not actually in the game. You're on the game tab. You can see everything on the board, but everything in the zones is going to be face down, so not visible to you, which is just a feature of Lackey that I guess, like, if you're spectating a game, it makes sure that I'm not gonna send a text or something to one of the guys that's playing and be like, hey, he's got Son of God in his hand, you should use your main philosophy or something like that. So yeah, it's just kind of a cheating thing. That's not going to be a huge problem in the redemption community, at least it's not now, and hopefully won't be in the future, but that is just a feature of Lackey. And so now let's say I want to end my game. There's a few ways to do that. I can click this X in the game tab up here. I can just completely disconnect from the server by clicking the X on the server tab here. There's also a disconnect from server button that would do that. And then lastly, there's a close game button here. So if I play that, then my game's no longer here. If I go back to the game tab, I'm back to this offline playing against a test dummy. A few things you want to make sure you do when you are playing a game is make use of this save game button in the menu here. That's pretty much the most important one, I guess, maybe followed up by load a save game. So you want to save your game fairly frequently because Lackey does crash. Like I said before, it's a little bit buggy, and sometimes the server crashes or your connection, you lose connection, and if you don't have your game saved, then you'll have to start over. When you go to load your saved game, it will bring your deck back, it will put everything back where it was, and if you're playing with another person, then it will bring their deck back as long as they are currently in the game. If they're not in the game, it will just bring all of your stuff back, and it functions how you would probably expect it to. If you and your opponent both save the game, it saves locally on your computer, kind of in your Lackey files. So whoever saved the game most recently is going to be the one who you want to load the saved game if it does happen to crash. There is a shortcut for it that I usually use, which is just Control S, as it is in most applications, which is beneficial because if you go over to the menu here and you want to click on save game, but maybe you accidentally click new game, that's going to reset everything and you'll have to go back to when you last saved, and that's just going to make things more of a hassle. And there's also disconnect from server, disconnect from game options here as well. Nothing else here is really all that useful. Usually everything can just be done from the server tab or the game tab, kind of in-game stuff. So that's pretty much everything on the server tab here. So we'll go ahead and disconnect from server. Now moving on to the plugin tab. We should be pretty familiar with this one already because we had to use it to load the redemption plugin. But if you need to ever get an update for the redemption plugin, this is where you're going to go, and there's a recent URLs thing here. You can click on that and that will load that into your update URL spot, and then you can do install or update from URL. Looks like they're yeah, it wasn't really anything else I needed. All my files seem to be up to date. No need to download anything because, just freshly did this in the last video. If you don't have this recent URLs thing, you can always just copy it from the boards or from someone else and paste it into here and do the installer update. You can do that whenever you want to, and it will keep all of your decks in here. So I've still got Josh's Grand Prix deck in here. If the names of cards ever change, then that would take them out of the deck. Or I think just if any of the information changes. Oh, I guess no, it would just be the name of the card that changes. So like, for the longest time, the Remnant Lost Soul was called Remant. There was only one N in there. And so before that update, if you had this Lost Soul in your deck, it would take it out and you would have 49 cards or however many cards you had in your deck minus one, because it would not recognize Lost Soul Remant, and it's not part of the plugin anymore. So that's just something to be aware of. If you ever find that you're missing some cards in a deck after you do an update, then you'll want to maybe ask somebody what all updated, so that you can figure out what cards you're missing if you don't know off the top of your head. Yeah, keep an eye out on the boards and the Discord for when Lackey updates happen so that you can get the most recent stuff. And then it's also important that your plugin matches what your opponent is playing. So you want to make sure you both have the most recent, or you both have at least the same version of the Redemption plugin, so that you're seeing the cards the same. If you don't have the same one, then maybe they'll load a deck and play a card, and it's going to show up as a completely different card for you, just because of the way that the plugin is set up in the background, I guess. So that's pretty much everything you need to know for the plugin information. If you ever want to go back to War 3000 and figure out what this game is all about, you can use this little load recent plugin option, but we'll stick with Redemption for now. Last tab here is the preferences, and there's a whole bunch of options in here. We already showed you guys how to change your name and add some of your other personal features, how to change your picture to a ham. And if you go to appearance, this is a bunch of stuff that you can kind of play around with, but it's not really, not much of it really is necessary, I guess. So I guess maybe the one thing that's a preference that you might want to change is like opponent's cards on the table always face you. You can check and uncheck that, and so that once you're in a game and let's say you put a card down, I put my Assyrian camp down here, it would show up for my opponent over here, but it would be upside down. So if you've watched most of my other Lackey videos, you're going to see it like this, where their cards do face me, because that's the way that I have it set up and the way that I prefer. But you can maybe if you have the tilt on and you're playing like this, then you would want your opponent's cards to face this way, because it looks like you're playing on an actual table. I don't know, that's kind of up to your preferences. So and that's why it's in the preferences, but it's going to be different for you and your opponent. Same with like the zoom and the scale and everything. That's all going to be personalized to you. If you want to do or have the zoom and the scale be the same for everyone, maybe you're playing a multiplayer game and it's just going to be easier to keep it all consistent so everybody's looking at the cards the same. And if I have my stuff really small and I put them right next to each other, and someone else has them really big, then they're going to overlap like this, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to see. So if I want that to be the same for everyone, you can do /zoom sync, no spaces, no capitals or anything, and you just set everyone's table zoom to the same value that you have. So now I can do the same thing. If I, say I want mine at about 130 or 129% the scale, then I can do /scale sync, and that will set everyone at the table's scale to 129%. or whatever you have yours set to. So anyways, that's kind of some of the stuff you can do with the preferences, and and it will only change it for you unless you, have ways to change it for other people with commands like that. So next, the key bindings. These are something that I don't use as often as I probably could. Control S is pretty much the only one that I use with any frequency, but there's also, like by default, you can do Control D to draw one, you can do Control R to roll, Control M to reveal bottom. So there's a few things that you can do. Maybe I'll make a little an option here to flip a coin. I'll just do Control C, and now if I go to my game here and hit Control C, it flips the coin, the result is heads. Cool. So you can personalize these. I know some people like shortcuts, some people don't really care because it's all on here. You can just use your mouse to roll a die that way or flip a coin or whatever. But then you also have shortcuts for the canned messages that you have set up, which will be in the next tab. So let's go over to chat and macros. These I definitely make good use of. You can change what these do and what they say. So maybe the first one I want to do, /draw3. That's going to be one that we use fairly often in Redemption. Text or test message 2. Pass is a fairly reasonable one. Maybe I want to have MI question mark for my initiative, or if I want to tell my opponent your initiative, I can have YI. These are things that you use fairly often in Redemption, and these can be fully personalized to you, however you want them to show up. So now I've got draw 3, pass, my initiative, your initiative right here. So if I click draw 3, then I will draw 3 cards. So yep, you've got 20 spaces here to fully customize that however you want, and if you ever want to reset it, you can just click reset to default LackeyCCG canned messages. Then the skins is another thing that doesn't really matter or affect gameplay, but if you want to make your Lackey window look a lot different, there's a bunch of options here that you can play around with, and I am just going to load or keep it as the default for now, because this isn't really something you need to do, but it's just kind of a fun preference thing that you can do. Now finally we're getting to the sound options. The only thing you need to do here is unclick enable sound, and all sounds will be disabled. That's what I do. It's definitely a personal preference thing. If you certain sounds you want and some you don't, like if you wanted to make a sound when you save your deck, then you can kind of leave some options on and some off. So maybe I want to turn all of them off except for when I flip a coin. That way I can hear that satisfying flip every time I flip a coin. But for now I'm just going to uncheck enable sound, and we'll just keep those all off. And over in performance, and a few more things that don't necessarily matter to you, but if you have worries about Lackey not performing quite as well on your computer because maybe it's older or doesn't have as much functionality, again, Lackey is pretty or not very resource intensive, but things like having different performance presets, you can do low, and that way it will keep it at a reasonable performance, I guess, performance level for however many cards it will load at the same time, or like images it will load, and that will I guess adjust how much memory it's currently using. Probably not something you should have to worry about too much. If you go to high, that's going to be everything checked, and if you go to change any of these things, you can, if you want to have the number of simultaneous card images set to 3000, which is the default for Redemption, then you can do that. It's going to be a custom way to set it up. The rest of these don't necessarily make a huge difference as far as I know, or in my opinion, I guess. But it's something that you can look to if your computer seems to be struggling with it. And then lastly, miscellaneous. There's a few other preferences, like if you want to show the tutorial at the startup, if you want to, enable scripts so that you can do certain functionality automatically. There's also auto clear cards moved off the table. That one's actually probably useful for redemption, because if you're like before, when I had Noah and he was sent to the deck, and then I drew him and he was still meek, maybe I want him to reset, if he has experience counters on him, like for type 2, or if he has like an increase that you're marking with experience counters. Then once he goes to the deck or to your hand, and then those things get cleared, and so this auto clear cards moved off the table is actually one that you might want to have checked for redemption. That makes sense, so I'll leave it like that, even though this isn't my usual installation, but whatever. And I'll have to go and change it in the other one. But yeah, that's pretty much everything here for LackeyCCG and the redemption plugin. I guess I say pretty much everything specifically because it's probably not everything. It's definitely not everything, but that's I think most of the options that you should get you through most games. And certainly if you ever need help or have any questions, you can check out the Lackey help desk on the Discord, or you can just ask someone, or the person you're playing with, maybe they have a little bit more experience and can help you do something. Like maybe you have a card like Mayhem. If I've got 8 cards in my hand, I can reveal to all, none in shuffle, and now it'll be random, and I can select these 6 cards to shuffle back into my deck. Just things like that, where the way to carry out a card's ability isn't necessarily intuitive, or it's not as easy as it is with physical cards, but there are definitely ways to do things. Lackey games will be a little bit slower because of some things like that, but it's also nice because you don't spend nearly as much time shuffling, so that's that is definitely a bonus. So anyways, that's where we're going to wrap up the video for today. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys, and once again, let me know if you want a booster draft tutorial or anything else with Lackey that you'd like to see, as I've become fairly familiar with it at this point. So we'll catch you later. Bye.